Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Fundamentals of Programming. Today we're going to be talking about strings. And if you are a cat, I'm sorry, you are watching the wrong video. This isn't about yarn or the strings that make up your clothing. This is about strings as computers see them. And we'll also be talking a little bit about some basic string operators like the slice and membership tests, as well as string concatenation. So again, if you heard cat right there in the concatenation, this isn't for cats. This is for programmers. So if you're looking for cat videos, go elsewhere. So to start off with, if you're curious, we talked about this in the previous two videos, but this video is going to be talking about Alright, so if you recall from the last video, usually inputs are going to be strings in our case. So right now I have first and last name inputs right here, so you can actually enter inputs. Just to review strings, let's say string 1 equals this. Let's say name Scipio. So this right here is the string contents, and notice those are inside of quotations. Now those could be double or single, but they do have to match. So if I had a double and a single, this is not going to work. This will give me an error. Notice I get a little red X right there. So you have to match, but you can use a double or a single. I use doubles just because, double quotes, because I don't know, I'm just used to that. So the cool thing about strings is you could multiply this string by, I could say string 2 equals string 1 times 2, and then I can print, it's string 1 times 2. Oh, it's autocorrect, gotta love it. Stop doing that. And print string 2. I'm gonna comment this out really quick here just so it doesn't run right now. Give me a second here. Hit run. It's going to say name. So all it did is it multiplied that string by itself twice. So like in math, if you multiply 2 times 2, that's 2 2's, which is 4. Here we're multiplying name by 2, which is 2 names, so we get name. So that does work, not necessarily the way you might want to. Like if this was a number, right? If this was 400, and we tried to multiply 400 by 2, we're going to get 400, which is why we need to use integers or floating points in that case. We could not use the division sign. That's not going to work. Can't use the minus sign, and we can't use the plus sign unless we're doing something called concatenation. And that brings me to my next little point here. So concatenation is just combining variables or strings together. That's all it is. Again, concatenation is just combining strings to form one new string. So if I hit run here, it's going to ask me for name. I'm going to say Scipio Africanus. If you don't know who that is, you should look him up. Pretty interesting guy. And it's going to print out Scipio Africanus. Now, the cool thing about string concatenation is, notice I had to do 2 print lines here. What I could do instead with string concatenation is I could just say plus last name. And now it's going to concatenate first and last name together, and it's going to actually print out Scipio Africanus on one line as one string. Notice it doesn't have a space, so I could go ahead and add a space here if I wanted to. And that would also work. So notice these are variables, right? And then I'm adding a string that is not a variable, it's just a string. It's an empty string with just a space in there. And then the last name, which is also a variable containing a string. So I do that again, Scipio Africanus. And now I get that. Let's say, alternatively, I could switch these around, and maybe I wanted to go last name first. And do comma here, and let's say, and then first name. Hit run. Let's do Hannibal this time. It was fought. So it would be Barker Hannibal. So this string concatenator, again, all it does is, if I were to save this as a variable, all it's doing, right, is, let's say that this is combined name. All it's doing is it's allowing us to form one new string, right? So if I say combined name now, it's going to print out the same thing. Oh, I got to spell things right. That's going to be a problem. And now it prints out the same thing. So notice, it doesn't matter if I use the prints or not. it's going to allow me to concatenate this into a single string. So now combined name is last name plus a comma and a space and first name. So that is called string concatenation. Again, all that does is allows us to add strings together to create a new single string, which is pretty awesome. So that's the first operator I want to talk about. The next one I want to talk about is the slice operator. Alright, so the slice operator allows us to actually grab substrings, and all a substring is a piece of a string, right? It's a substring, it's a part of that string. So it allows us to grab a part of that string rather than the whole string, and then allows us to store that as a value on its own. So let's take a look at an example. So let's say we had this string called correct answer, which just had inside of it a : blue. And let's say we just wanted the answer letter. Now we could use the slice operator to grab just this letter. Now how we do that is we say, let's name it letter or answer letter. And all it is if we say correct answer and we use an angle bracket, we can actually select the first letter here. Now if I do that and hit print answer letter, hit run, it's going to print A. Now with this, this is called the index right here. So 0 is the first index in a computer. That's because computers start their binary system, so they start on 0. It goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So 0 is always the first index. Now all this index indicates is what specific position inside that string we want. So A is index 0. This colon would have been position 1. So if we do that and print 1, we would get a colon, right? And so on. If we do 2, we're going to get B. And so on. If we do 5, we're going to get E. And if we do 6, let's see what happens. Is there a 6? No, it's going to say string index out of range, which means there is no 6th index value there. So that would be something that just doesn't exist in our case. So again, the string operator, it takes in a variable name here, which is correct answer, and then we give it a angle bracket or the square brackets, and inside of those square brackets we give it an index. In our case, for the correct answer, we put in 0 because it is the first index, and we get our correct answer letter. Now, alternatively, with the slice operator, we can grab a range of values. Now, with that range of values, let's say we didn't want the answer letter, we wanted the answer color. Now, for this, let's change these values really quick here, answer color. Now what we can do is we know that it's not, we can give it a range of indices. So we would start with the first indice, which would be, so it'd be 0, 1, 2. We want to start on the second index, or third index if you're thinking in terms of like a normal human being. And then we can go a colon, which will indicate how far we want to go, and we want to go up to index 6. We do that, and we're going to get blue, which is the correct answer color, right? So now we have this. Rather than just one single character, we have a range of characters, right? So again, these are called substrings. So blue is a substring of correct answer, the same way A is also a substring of correct answer. They are just parts of that entire string, and we are grabbing those using the slice operator. Now, in this case, notice I used, it goes from 2 to 6, but before, we know that 6 doesn't exist on this string. So with the range, the way it goes is it's the starting value and then the value right after we want to stop. So if we did 5, it's going to stop on 4. So we're only going to get 2, 3, 4, which is BLU. So we need to go up to the point where it stops. So it's going to go 2, 3, 4, 5 and stop at 6 and not actually print that out, right? So that is the slice operator in a nutshell. So we can grab pieces of substrings or pieces of a string and store them as a new value, or just use them if we want to. So it's really, really useful. Again, all the slice operator does is it takes in a string, and then you put in square brackets, you put in the indices that you are interested in to grab a substring from, and then you grab that substring from the string that you specified by that variable name. It's pretty awesome, very useful. We'll be using that quite a bit. The next one I want to talk about is called a membership test, and let's look at a couple examples of a membership test here. Alright, so let's go ahead and take a look at this membership test. Now, for this example, let's say we had a variable called customers, which is a string that has returning customers and then 3 names. What the membership test allows us to do is it allows us to check whether or not a specific string or substring is within the string we are curious in. So let's go ahead and say test Ross. And now this test Ross is going to test and see if Ross is in there, is in this customer string. So we can say Ross, which is the string we are looking for, a substring we are looking for, in customers. Now, let's see what is returned if we say test Ross. Let's see what's returned. So if we hit run, it's going to give us an error in this case because I capitalize C. Again, be careful. So it says true. So the reason it says true is because Ross is in customers. It is in there. So we'll be using this a little bit later. If we know Ross is in there, then we can get the position that Ross is at, and we'll be doing that a little bit later to actually search through strings and grab values. Now, so we know Ross is in there. There's also a test, test to see whether Ross is not a member. And all you do there is you just say not in, and this should print out false because Ross is in there. So it is a member of customers, so therefore this is false, right? Ross not in customers, question mark. That means that if Ross is in customers, test Ross will be false. So that's a membership test, and we'll be using that a little bit more when we talk about some if-else and control structures. It's really useful for strings, and it's going to be a pretty valuable tool. So remember this one. That's all I really want to talk about for that. It's pretty straightforward. Again, it's in and not in. You're just testing to see whether or not this specific string is inside of customers. We could also test to see if, I don't know, Bob is in customers. And let's say change this to test Bob. And hit run, and it's going to give me false because Bob is not inside of here. So you got to be careful though, because if I was looking for Tom in customers, let's see what happens. Notice it gives me true. Now the reason for that is because there is a Tom in customers right there. So it's not going to be looking for like an individual part of the string, it's just going to be looking for that substring. So if Tom is in there and you didn't, like if we did capital, it's going to be different now, right? It'll be false. But if I were to do lowercase Tom, it's going to give me true because Tom is in there. It's just part of customers, right? So you got to be careful with these membership tests and be really aware of what the specific substring you're looking for. So let's go ahead and summarize what we covered today. Alright, so in this video we talked about a string, which is a variable whose values are a number of connected characters inside of quotations. Now, we also talked about some specific operators that you can perform on a string. Now, you cannot divide strings, but you can add or concatenate strings together to form one new string. So if you had 2 separate strings, you could add another string to that string to form one string, as we saw with the case of the first and last name example. You can also slice substrings out of a string, and all that again means is we can take out specific parts of a string and make that a new string on its own, using, again, angle brackets, the variable name, and indices. Then lastly, we talked about membership of a substring to see if it's inside of a string. So we were looking for specific names in our customer list, which was a string, and we were able to find out whether or not those names were inside of that string. And again, you got to be careful about what you're looking for there, because you might get something unintended. So that is our video. Hopefully it's useful. Go ahead and play around with that, and happy programming.